My daughter asked me to read one more chapter. I had no idea she was keeping us both alive. She was 8 years old and had just figured out that if she begged long enough at bedtime, I'd eventually give in. It had been 4 months since my mother died, and I was running on hollow. Grief does something to your edges, softens them in the worst way. So when Maya held up the book and said, "Please, Dad, just one more," I almost said no. I almost kissed her forehead and turned off the light and went downstairs to sit alone in the dark, the way I'd been doing every night since the funeral. But she looked at me the way kids do when they're not asking for a thing in the world except for you to stay. So I sat back down on the edge of her bed, pulled the book open to chapter 7, and I read. One chapter became 2. She kept asking questions about the characters, why the girl made that choice, whether the dog was going to be okay, what I thought would happen next. I hadn't talked that much in weeks. I'd been going to work and coming home and eating whatever required the fewest dishes and disappearing into sleep like it was the only exit. But sitting there in her dim lamplight, answering questions about a fictional golden retriever, I felt something loosen in my chest. We finished the book, the whole thing. She fell asleep with her hand still touching the cover, and I sat there a few minutes longer than I needed to, just watching her breathe. It was almost 10 when I finally came downstairs. My phone had 14 missed calls, 9 from my neighbor Dennis, 3 from a number I didn't recognize, 2 from my brother. I called Dennis back first because we'd known each other 11 years, and he'd never once called me more than twice about anything. He answered on the first ring and said, "Where are you? Are you okay?" I told him I was home. He went quiet in a strange way and then said, "No, you're not." I walked to the front window and looked out, and I couldn't understand what I was seeing at first. The streetlight was reflecting off something wet. There were shapes in my driveway I didn't recognize. Then my eyes adjusted and I realized the shapes were furniture, and the wet was water, and the entire front of my garage had caved inward. I was out the door before I'd put on shoes. The smell hit me before anything else. Smoke and something chemical underneath it, sharp and wrong. A firefighter caught me at the edge of my lawn and told me to stay back. I told him my daughter was inside, and he grabbed both my arms and said, Sir, there's nobody inside. The house is empty." I told him we'd been there all night. I pointed at Maya's window, still glowing faintly from the lamp we'd left on. He radioed someone. Then he looked at me differently. "You were home this whole time?" I said yes, reading to my daughter in her room upstairs, the back of the house. He said the fire had started in the garage and moved through the front rooms fast, the way fires do when they have help. That word stopped me. Help. A detective arrived around midnight. She had a notepad and a way of asking questions that made them feel like statements. She told me they'd found the point of origin. She told me they'd found a material used to encourage ignition. She told me they'd pulled footage from the camera Dennis had mounted above his front door 2 years ago after someone keyed his car. She showed me the footage on her phone. A figure in a gray jacket moving along the side of my house at 7:43 p.m. Unhurried, purposeful. She told me they'd made an arrest an hour ago. My business partner of 6 years. The one I'd recently discovered had been pulling money from our accounts for almost 18 months. The one I'd told 2 weeks prior that I was taking him to court. She said he'd been watching the house. She said he knew my schedule, knew when I put Maya to bed, knew I spent evenings alone downstairs near the front of the house. She said if I'd been sitting in my usual chair at my usual time, they would have found me in the garage rubble. I stood in my driveway in bare feet and wet grass and thought about a little girl who just wanted to know if the dog was going to be okay. It was. We both were.